Welcome back to the Relaxing Ghost channel here on YouTube. Today we have the 25-year celebration of Triple H, the King of Kings, the Game, the Cerebral Assassin, the 14-time WWE Champion, Evolution, DX, all that crazy stuff. It's probably my favorite of all time, Triple H. And let me just adjust the chat real quick. So this is not going to be a review of SmackDown this past week. This is going to be just a little live stream dedicated to Triple H and the kind of career he's had over the past 25 years. So let's get right into this, guys. If anyone can join us, that'll be cool. If not, I hope you enjoy the video after it's posted later tonight. So yeah, Triple H debuted back in 1995. His first opponent would be Buck Zumoff, and that was on almost to the day. Yeah, tomorrow would officially be 25 years, and April 29th, 1995. Crazy. Buck Zumoff, nothing, nobody too crazy here with Buck Zumoff, but, he would go on to, main event several WrestleManias, all the world championships, tag titles, intercontinental titles, European title, yes, the authority figure on Raw for a little while. It's safe to say, Triple H has definitely had a Hall of Fame career, whether he was with DX or Evolution. So let's start out here with a few matches. WrestleMania 14 versus Owen Hart for the European Championship, and these guys had a kind of weird feud going on. And if you look at it from a personal standpoint, Bret Hart just left over the Montreal Screwjob. Shawn Michaels is Triple H's buddy, and he's going to be leaving after Mania here. So I would have liked to see a little bit more of Owen and Triple H after this. It's sad that, Owen passed away a year later. But I always liked this match here. You had China getting involved, costing Owen the match, and Triple H would retain the championship. And this is where kind of I really started watching the product in a more kind of casual base. It wouldn't be till about a year later or so where I really became like a hardcore kind of fan in the late 99, watching Raw all the time, watching SmackDown once it started, going to pay-per-view parties and all kind of cool stuff. We would be collecting figures and the belts, CDs, DVD, or not DVDs, but the VHS tapes. And it all really started around this time period, early 98, 99. Oh, what's up, man? Hey, how's everyone doing? 8K Master, what's up, buddy? Hope everyone's doing well and, staying safe. All the good things like that. So, the main kind of thing I wanted to touch on here today was my kind of favorite Triple H matches. Of course, the marriage to Stephanie. It's a touchy subject for a lot of people. You're either the guy that thinks Triple H had everything handed to him, or you're an actual fan of Triple H like myself. A lot of people might not like Triple H, but they don't use the marriage against him. I think that's a pretty cheap shot on some people's views to do that, but Triple H had passion from the beginning, and he'd be in on production meetings, and I'm not sure if he was in booking meetings or anything like that, but it's been said, he used his marriage to Stephanie to, you know, book himself in the main event and all this crazy stuff. So I'm not a believer in that. I honestly think, Triple H's hard work paid off in some instances. The guy was talented. He did have, some incredible matches. And yeah, Triple H's favorite match is against Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit, WrestleMania 20. Yeah, man, that's a hell of a match. It's definitely on my list. And the WrestleMania 20 main event is one of the greatest matches of all time in terms of Mania matches. And that's a sad thing that it's not even mentioned or brought up. It's not on DVDs. It's the lost WrestleMania because of Benoit. Got our morning coffee, so cheers to everybody who had a good morning today. Yeah, Triple H has had 14 world titles over the years. Let's go back to Fully Loaded 98 in a 2 out of 3 falls match versus The Rock. And this is right after King of the Ring in 98. The Rock is still IC champion here. He had a long feud with Ken Shamrock, and The Rock is, he's one of the longer reigning IC champions in several years. Triple H and The Rock just had this amazing chemistry. It's crazy to look back at how many matches they actually had. We go back here. They had that ladder match a month later at SummerSlam for the IC title. It's like the Randy Orton, John Cena thing all over again, just in the Attitude Era. And even in the Attitude Era, you didn't really see guys feud too often. They'd have, a 2 or 3 month feud, and that'd kind of be it. It might be brought back the following year or so. Oh man, favorite Triple H theme song. Wow, I'll probably go with the Motorhead, the game, as the favorite of mine. There's just something about that song that's just amps you up. My Time was a good theme for the time period. It fit Triple H well for him in winning the WWE title for the first time, and breaking away from DX and all that cool stuff. But I think once he turned into Triple H with Motorhead, I think that just brought him up to a main event status. And we've seen Motorhead a few times at WrestleMania. That was always cool. Even I don't even think Lemmy even knew the words to that song, they said, but that was just his variant of the song. I really enjoyed DX going into the Hall of Fame last year. It wasn't your more traditional Hall of Fame ceremony. They had a ring. They didn't have the big elaborate stage or anything like that. So they did their speech in the ring, and they just gave every guy a little bit of time. And I always thought the DX Hall of Fame would have been a bit goofy, and that's exactly what we got. I really enjoyed that. They paid homage to China. it seemed once once China was with Triple H, I thought that was a really good pairing. They were it seemed like they weren't too confident in Triple H by himself in the beginning, so they kept putting different guys with him. They put Mr. Perfect at first, and then Curtis Hughes for whatever reason. I believe Sable was even with Triple H at some period of time, and then Triple H meets China at the gym, and they become friends. They're dating and whatnot, and Triple H gets China the job, and she is just this massive woman, over 200 pounds. She could bench press, 300 or 400 pounds, and to see a woman like this, it was mind blowing to see. She definitely added some mystique to Triple H, and they would be this great pairing for a couple of years. It's weird to think that once he won the title and China would win the IC title, they never really went back to that. Triple H would eventually crash the wedding with Test and Stephanie, and then he would be married to Stephanie, and that would be his on-screen role with Steph, and China was doing something else. So I always thought that would have been cool to see Triple H and China with both the IC and WWF championships. They never really did go back to that. Um, Ric Flair, Ric Flair and Triple H had some decent matches together. The one that sticks out to me is Taboo Tuesday 2005 steel cage match. I'm not sure if that was for the IC title or not. It might have been, but Ric Flair and his comeback to WWE had a big part to do with Triple H, and for a while Flair lost his confidence. He wasn't too happy with himself, and Triple H said, "Come on, man, you're the 16-time world's heavyweight champion." And he got Ric Flair back on track. Flair became his manager, and this is when the whole Reign of Terror thing started going on. Um, and I'm gonna get into that in a minute. They did this kind of Ric Flair tribute show in, I believe it was Greensboro, North Carolina, and they hoisted Flair up, and it was a really emotional moment. And it's on that Ric Flair Ultimate DVD set. If you ever got a chance, check that match out. It's really cool. This steel cage match with Flair, incredible for its time. They used a lot of blood. Back when WWE was more lenient on the blood and whatnot. I always felt blood and wrestling, it was just the perfect match. And Triple H is one of those guys. He bled in like every match he had almost. Um, if you look at a lot of those matches in 99, 2000, and maybe up to 2005 or 6, he probably bled in every match he had. And he knew how to do it. It's not like he would hit himself and it'd just be like one little trickle of blood. It'd be like the Crimson Mask. Really cool stuff. I always enjoyed that. Sometimes guys do it comes down and then it's gone like 5 minutes later. Triple H would do it towards the end of the match where his whole body would be covered in blood. And my God, look at look at some of those matches he's had with Cactus Jack and whatnot. Um, Triple H and DX, they had some really good matches in 2009. The TLC match versus Jericho, pretty good stuff with Legacy as well. I always liked their run there, that they had a great feud. Surprisingly, put Legacy over a couple of times. Evolution was always probably my all-time favorite stable. Um, many older fans, older than me, are probably going to go back to the Horsemen, but Evolution was my stable that I grew up on. Even after DX and all that, I just thought Evolution was just badass. Um, you had Triple H and Flair, who had been buddies for a couple years by this point, or at least a year or so, and they picked up these two young guys, Randy Orton and Batista. I just thought everything clicked so well. Unfortunately, Batista got injured early on in, I think, '03, or might have been 2003 at some point, and he's going to return at the Survivor Series in '03, costing Stone Cold Steve Austin his job. And, they got a lot of mileage out of that. A lot of mileage, a lot of great stuff happened because of Evolution. WrestleMania 20 and WrestleMania 21, all the stuff with Dave Batista, and the feud with Randy Orton at Unforgiven 2004. Not too fond of that stuff. I would have liked to see Orton hold the title a bit longer. He wasn't ready. They've admitted that they put the title on him way too quick, and things happen. But Dave Batista, my God, this guy was what, 325 pounds. He was bigger than Triple H was, and they had the match at WrestleMania. It was what it was. It's not your all-time five-star classic match. It was good. They have a rematch, and then they have this Hell in a Cell match. Just absolutely incredible. Batista beating Triple H, 3 straight pay-per-view matches. It's something that rarely ever happened, and I don't think Triple H ever beat Batista until this past year's WrestleMania 35. So this was a long-standing feud for over a decade. Yeah, definitely agree, man. Triple H's matches in 2000, we're gonna get into that as well. Yeah, let's get right into that. The Royal Rumble 2000, that's probably number one on my list. Royal Rumble 2000, that epic street fight with Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, and the build up to that was just, it was done so well. Where he's like, after the beating you gave me, I don't think mankind is, able to face you at the Royal Rumble. But I got a replacement. I think you might know him. He takes the mask off, he rips his shirt off, and it's Cactus Jack. I mean, I get chills just thinking about that thing. And that's like one of those things where you do it might work, it might not, depending, who's playing the roles. Triple H selling it like he had encountered Cactus before, and he ended up on the losing side of that. And it was ironic that it happened in Madison Square Garden as well, on Raw at some point in '97, I think. So Royal Rumble 2000, that pedigree on the thumbtacks was just that was incredible. I never thought I'd see that. Um, they brought back the handcuffs, and I like when they kind of go back and bring up old things, like in matches or in promos or things like that. The handcuffs, and they're like, oh no, we don't want to live, we don't want to relive what happened here last year, with The Rock just beating the hell out of Foley, 10 or 11 chair shots to Foley. And, eventually The Rock saves Mankind, Cactus Jack, whatever you want to call him. Rock saves Foley. you know, I never thought Mick Foley would win the title here, but it was so incredible. That this is one of those first times where they introduced the barbed wire and the thumbtacks and all that crazy hardcore stuff. Um, and people have said this is where Triple H has really elevated his game, really took it to the next level, and they didn't really buy him as champion at this time or up to this point. And the Royal Rumble, the match with Cactus, that really helped kind of elevate him to that main event status. The Hell in a Cell match the next month, Mick Foley retires. I didn't think I would see that. For me, a younger fan at that time, I never thought I would see Mick Foley retire. You know, at that period in time, it was sad to see him go. We know he would return the next month at WrestleMania and then become commissioner. But as it happened, I didn't want to see Mankind retire. I love the stuff with The Rock and Sock, and he was one of the best hardcore wrestlers I ever seen, and the level of psychology that he had was on another level. So I always liked that Hell in a Cell. I thought it was very creative the way they used they locked the door up. You're not getting out of here, Cactus. So they use the steps. He throws the steps through the cell wall, making an exit. They use the fire, the barbed wire, and Foley takes a massive fall through the roof. This time they gigged the ring up so it would kind of collapse on, break his fall a bit. And I always look back to that match at No Way Out and think it's one of those forgotten cell matches. You don't hear many people talk about that one. It's more of Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and some of the other Hell in a Cell matches. WrestleMania 2000, Triple H retains the title. I believe that's the first time a heel has walked out as champion, retained anyway. Yokozuna had retained the title, but he didn't walk out as champion. He retained against Luger and iffy circumstances. And the year prior, he'd won the title, Yoko. So Triple H had walked in and walked out of WrestleMania as champion. I think that's one of the more shocking WrestleMania endings, for that time period. We'd seen Austin, reign as champion 2 times in a row. So I think they just wanted to switch it up there. I always loved WrestleMania 16. It's my personal favorite. I don't even know how many times I've watched that tape, but it's one of those shows you either like it or you don't. It's my favorite. It's my favorite of all time. Yeah, I definitely think it's underrated, buddy. Triple H versus Jericho, WrestleMania 18. That's on my list here. Um, yeah, apparently the match had more praise as time went on. I could see that happening. Um, if you just watch the match is good. It's a slow burning match. They're working on Triple H's quad. He just returned from, you know, very serious injury here. People that tear their quads might not even walk again, let alone, step inside a wrestling ring. So this was very serious. Um, they worked the leg a lot. Triple H would just came back like Triple H. I mean, what do you do when you can't work legs? You work all your upper body. He came in, he looked incredible. He definitely put on some size in his time off. And, I'll always enjoy WrestleMania 18. I also agree with that. It's one of the more underrated manias. All everyone talks about is Rock and Hogan, but it's a story to see Triple H return, winning the undisputed title. I used to have a little picture, and it was a shot from WrestleMania 18 with Triple H and holding both titles up. Um, and yeah, looking back on that now, I just watched that the other day, and it seemed the crowd was definitely burnt out from that The Rock and Hogan match. Should it have main evented? Probably. What they were saying is, it's championship match. It should go on last, and blah blah blah. So whatever. Looking back, it probably should have main evented with Hogan and Rock, but the crowd, they did wake up towards the end of the match. It's a WrestleMania I enjoy. Back to 2000 for a little bit. Um, this was definitely a good year for Triple H and The Rock. We had the rise of Kurt Angle as well. Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was done. He was out with a serious neck injury here. They didn't know what was going on. He got dropped on his head at SummerSlam a couple years back, and they didn't know. So after Mania, Triple H and The Rock have a decent match at Backlash. That probably should have been the Mania main event. Austin with one of these incredible pops there at Backlash. And then the Iron Man match, Judgment Day 2000. That was something I was really looking forward to. I never was watching when Brett and Sean had theirs. I've heard about it. I seen part of it after the fact. But this was something that really interests me. A 60-minute match. And whoever gets the most, pins or submissions or whatever is going to be the champion. Um, that's one hell of a match. Go back and watch that match, guys. Um, Triple H ends up winning the title back. You have Shawn Michaels as the referee, the American Badass, making his return debut. And, that'll be one of those, epic moments in history where the American Badass, debuts at Judgment Day. It kind of overshadows the Iron Man match in the end. That's like one of those good back and forth kind of matches. Triple H and The Rock, I believe it ended 6 falls to 5, where they were tied up going into the final seconds. And I did not want to see a tie. I don't like ties. They do them once in a while, and it doesn't end up well. Um, for the rest of 2000, Triple H was pretty solid. Um, the SummerSlam triple threat. He had a match with Benoit at No Mercy 2000. I believe a match with Angle at Unforgiven 2000. Might have those switched with Benoit and Angle, but Austin returns there, and they have this, crazy no holds barred match. This isn't on my list, but it's just one of those crazy moments where Triple H gets picked up in a car and they drop him like 50 feet in the air. That's one of those insane moments. Uh, Triple H probably would have been dead if that was real. Um, they were taking risks here in 2000. Probably my all-time favorite match is Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin from No Way Out 2001. 2 out of 3 falls. It wasn't for any championships. It was just these two guys. They hated each other so much. They they wanted to rip each other's heads off. And if they had any physical contact, Austin would be out of the WrestleMania 17 main event, and Triple H would be suspended for 6 months. on the spot, no matter who started it. So these guys had been boiling each other's blood for the past, 2 years at least, and it all came down to no way out. I love the build of this, the contract signing, Triple H going after JR, and Austin going after Stephanie. It was well done. The match itself, well done. The first fall, straight wrestling. Second fall, street fight. And the third fall, inside of a steel cage. So yeah, this movie man is his favorite match. Hell in a Cell with The Undertaker. Another very good pick here. That 2 out of 3 falls match with Austin, it'll go down as, probably my all-time favorite match. 2000 was just full of moment after moment for me anyway. I enjoyed pretty much the most of 2001 on pay-per-view wise. Austin winning the first fall with the Stone Cold Stunner, and then Triple H winning back-to-back falls. This was a big win for Triple H that I don't think a lot of people, understand. Austin had his main event spot locked. Um, Although Austin probably needed the win more, I think Triple H needed it just as bad. Austin had been out 6 months. It helped Austin a lot more. Um, it's Austin's first one-on-one match in over a year. He had the thing with Rikishi, whatever that was, just a beat down. He was in the 6-man Hell in a Cell, the street fight with Triple H at Survivor Series, and then he's in the Rumble the next month. He might have had a few matches on Raw and SmackDown and whatnot at the end of 2000, but No Way Out 2001, it was Stone Cold's, first big one-on-one match. And, no better opponent than Triple H. And after that, they would become tag team champions. What's up, man? We got Stay Ruthless. So yeah, I got about 25 matches on my list here, and I could probably talk about Triple H for the next 5 years and all the great things he's ever done. Um, Triple H and Lesnar. It's rumored they've had issues with each other. Triple H didn't want to lose to Lesnar in 2002, so he went to Raw. Lesnar went to SmackDown. 10 years later, Lesnar's back with WWE. And excuse me, I'm having some gas. Lesnar's back in WWE. They have this awesome feud going. WrestleMania 29 was probably their weakest match, but they had a really good steel cage match at that Extreme Rules 2013. I love how they introduced the sledgehammer, and it's painted silver. He hit it up in the top of the cage. I always love when they do things like that. You don't see much of that anymore. Um, he broke Triple H's arm. He broke Shawn Michaels' arm. Poor Shawn Michaels. He just got the tar beaten out of him the last few years. Going back to 2002 for a second, the big Royal Rumble win for Triple H. Although it was predictable, it was still fun. It was really cool. His return in Madison Square Garden, it's one of the most epic returns of all time. All time in the Garden. That pop, that was insane. That they played the graphic for Triple H, and you hear rumblings. Then that music hits, and you hear a huge pop, and then he walks out, and it's just up to 12. That'll always be one of those moments. And whether he was out for 6-8 months with the torn quad, people were missing Triple H. He might have never returned if he wasn't as dedicated as he was. It was rumored he might have been returning at Vengeance that year. If you look at old pay-per-view posters, he was actually on that poster. They made that months in advance, thinking he might be able to return. Turns out doctors say, no, you're not going anywhere near the ring. So they made it official. He returns to Raw to this huge reaction. And Triple H returned as a babyface. Maybe not the best decision at the time, but it was a short-lived babyface run. The Rumble 2002 win, it is what it is. Not the greatest event overall, but it's a solid show. Got some fans in the chat here. What's going on, man? 2004 Punk. Yeah, I just covered that Royal Rumble 2000 a few minutes ago. Yeah, you know what? Definitely agree with that. Triple H was a more convincing heel. Yeah, he was never going to be Stone Cold or The Rock or Shawn Michaels. They needed a heel. They needed a top heel. It's something WWF never really had, being, a babyface territory. So, I always loved his heel stuff. And he could beat the tar out of you. He could leave you laying in your own blood, and the fans would just eat it up. They hated Triple H. They hated him. You think fans were going there to see, Triple H beat Cactus Jack? I don't think so. They wanted Triple H beat. And here's the thing, like, you have to build someone up to a point where when people beat them, it means something and it's worth people spending their money. So Triple H, winning all these world titles up to a certain point, it does mean something. It does have some sort of value. That's why I never really had too much hate on Triple H beating Booker T. I didn't think Booker T was ever going to beat Triple H, if I'm being honest here. Nothing against Booker T, but you can say whatever you want. I don't think Booker T was going to beat Triple H at that time. By time we get to WrestleMania 20, people want to see Triple H lose, and again at 21, and by time WrestleMania 22 rolls around, people want to see Triple H win against John Cena. That's pretty cool. Triple H, he was an amazing heel, and the DX regime, the McMahon Helmsley faction, whatever you want to call it. I love that stuff with the DX Express. That was some cool stuff. And Austin blowing up the DX Express. And I think that was before Backlash. I'm pretty sure that was Backlash, right around that time. And that was awesome, man. Those were good times. And I think before that, leading into Survivor Series 99, Austin had set up all these little traps for DX. He caught, I believe, Billy Gunn in a bear trap. He trapped X-Pac in a net. He tied up the Road Dogg and all this cool stuff. It was like, DX is getting poached out by Stone Cold Steve Austin. Moving forward, DX's 2006 run, I'll mention it briefly, but that was a time where I wasn't really into the WWE product. They had some decent stuff there with Rated RKO, and that's probably about it. But people absolutely cannot stand the Spirit Squad. I'm in that boat, and whatever, it's a part of the history, but I don't want to go back and relive any DX Spirit Squad matches. uh, I'll pass on the DX Spirit Squad matches. Um, SummerSlam 2002 might be one of the most important matches in Triple H's career versus Shawn Michaels in that unsanctioned match. You talk about emotion. I mean, Shawn Michaels has been out 4.5 years, and man, that that has a lot of story to it. There's, so many legs on that. Going bringing back DX, and Triple H just pedigrees him right in the ring. That was really the start of the big Triple H heel turn, and we would see them feud on and off for the next 2 or 3 years. But that match at SummerSlam in 2002, that'll always be one of the top Triple H matches of all time. You know, to put over Shawn Michaels and be safe with him and make everything look clean and crisp, and that was an amazing match. When you're out for 4.5 years, you want to be in there with a top player like Triple H. So we got the AK Master here saying he was a 2000s kid. Watched WWE during the Ruthless and PG's era, but the DX Spirit Squad stuff was bad. Also, he said his match against Hogan was okay, pretty good. I've never really been a fan of that match. I just don't think Hogan needed the title. It really pissed me off that he has this incredible return. Match at Mania is what it is, and then they kind of just yank the title off him and put it on Hogan. I don't know. I'm calling politics on that one. Thanks, Hogan. But I don't think, they changed the title 5 out of 6 pay-per-views in 2002. 5 in a row almost. WrestleMania, Backlash, Judgment Day, Vengeance, and SummerSlam. The WWE changed titles 5 out of 6 months in a row. That's crazy stuff to think about, changing the title that many times. I want to give a shout out to the WrestleMania 34 mixed tag team match, and the match with Rousey and Kurt Angle versus Triple H and Stephanie. That might be Stephanie's first WrestleMania match as well, I believe. She's had matches before that, but never at a WrestleMania. So that match was so good. I didn't know what to expect with this mixed tag match at WrestleMania 34. I mean, my God, you got Triple H, what he could do. Stephanie is like so. Kurt Angle is, a couple years past his prime here in 2018. And Ronda Rousey, she's new. She hasn't even had a match yet. That was one of those matches I had a lot of eyeballs on it. And it probably the best match of that WrestleMania. And it's looking back on that match, how much they probably had to prepare Ronda Rousey. It's just really cool when you're in there with a ring general like Triple H, who's gonna take care of you the best he can, and Ronda's in there just throwing everyone around. Is it 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 uh it makes you think how good Triple H actually is. And you can't forget about how good someone like Kurt Angle is as well, because, I'm sure he played a big part in putting that match together as well. WrestleMania 31 versus Sting. Sting's debut also in WWE. Um, again, we could argue if Sting should have won or lost, but seeing Sting out of WrestleMania was just so epic. It's something a lot of us never thought we would see. Whether Triple H was the right opponent or not, is debatable. The match is one of my favorites to go back and watch. The stuff with DX and the NWO. I was curious, what can Sting do here? And it'd been a year or so, or maybe a couple years since we've seen Sting in TNA, and that's one of those matches. I probably one of my favorites over the last few years to go back and relive some of that. His debut at Survivor Series was just so epic. Putting something together like that, and it sucks really what happened with Sting. The injuries. He doesn't blame Rollins or anything like that, but he had a long career before that. So I want to go through a couple more here, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. Um, WrestleMania 30 versus Daniel Bryan. You know, I love Owen and Brett, but that might take the cake for the best opening match. I didn't think Triple H had that in him at that point in his career. I really didn't think he had that match in him. I was I was I was debating whether or not that was going to be one of these, you know, Triple H type matches. It turned out to be a one hell of a match. And, you know, the past couple of years we've seen Triple H and The Undertaker, we've seen matches with Lesnar, again, so stuff. But that match with Daniel Bryan, I think that one hit home, and that really kind of brought Triple H's his kind of integrity back up a bit. It boosted his credibility back up a bit, that this guy still has something to give here. Yeah. Should it have been the Wolfpack? I don't know. Uh, who knows? That's debatable, man. If the NWO Wolfpack, I don't know. I think the black and white NWO was the right call there. You know, uh, Sting, black and white, NWO, black and white. It doesn't make too much sense there, but the NWO were a big part of WCW, so I could see their relationship somewhat making sense. And I don't know, the Macho Man probably wasn't going to be in WWE at that time. Conan, I don't know, Luger, he cannot wrestle at all, so it probably would have been only Kevin Nash out there. But whatever, it is what it is. That's one of those matches that it's like a time capsule going back to the Monday Night Wars, and what ifs, all these what ifs, with DX and the NWO and WCW and really cool things like that. The little callbacks to all the cool stuff they've done, with the bat and the sledgehammer, and Sting just cracking that sledgehammer right in half. Kayfabe. They did have two sledgehammers under that ring if you watch closely. Um, check it out. So, the ultimate wrestling fan here. When do I think Triple H will go into the Hall of Fame by himself? That's really hard to say at this point. Um, they still got guys like Taker, Rock, Sure, Jericho will go in at some point. Um, Look, Triple H might be one of those guys that never really goes into the Hall of Fame. Um, it might be years, maybe 10 years, 15 years from now. Triple H is still relatively young. I believe he will turn 50 this year. Don't quote me on that. He might be 49 this year, somewhere around that area. Um, but I don't know. I think he's one of those guys that, he doesn't really need the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he'll get the big Hall of Fame induction at some point. If I had to say, maybe within the next 10 years, it that's something I don't like really predicting. I'm sure he'll go in at some point. This year we had DX or NWO and Batista going in, so uh, and the perfect town, is where they do WrestleMania as well. I think that has a lot to do with some of the inductions. Um, we had another fella here. Well, yeah, Hogan, Hall, and Nash were part of the Wolfpack. Um, that was more of a kind of intertwined NWO Elite by that point. Um, NWO Hollywood Wolfpack. It was like all merged together with they had the B team and NWO Wolfpack. It was like the elite squad they had, and then the B team. It was a mess. There was like a million members in the NWO by that time, so I think the callback to the original NWO was the right call. That'd be like saying, put out Horace Hogan and Scott Norton, and they can help stay. I think it would have only worked with Hogan, Hall, and Nash. Who cares what about the shirts they're wearing? I don't think that really matters because the NWO were usually a thorn in Sting's side. I don't think Hogan was ever buddies with Sting like Kevin Nash was though, and Hogan was not in the NWO with Sting. I don't think that was ever. Hogan was never in the Wolfpack with Sting. By time '99 rolled around, that's when they had the NWO Elite, whatever it was called by that point. Couple more here. WrestleMania 20. No, I touched on that briefly, but that'll go down as, like I said, the greatest WrestleMania main event of all time, with Eddie and Benoit as both of the world championships, both world champions at that time. Those two men, were overlooked for years up to that point. And for Triple H going in there, putting Benoit over, clean in the middle of Madison Square Garden, it definitely is a true performance there with Shawn Michaels. Um, Winning his first WWF championship, August 1999. I think that's where it all started, 21 years ago with Triple H. And it should have happened at SummerSlam the night prior, but for whatever reason, I think what it is Jesse Ventura didn't want to look silly putting over the heel champion after all that happened throughout the night and Triple H talking trash and whatnot. So they did the safe move, put it on Foley, and then Triple H beat him the next night on Raw. Probably more viewers seen Triple H win the title than they would have at SummerSlam. So it worked both ways. So Triple H's role as general manager, authority figure, I liked it at first, but that's one of those things where it just went on and on and on and on, month after month, for a year and a half, more than that probably. I mean, my God, by the time you look at it, we're going into what, WrestleMania. I think they cooled it off a bit by what, 20, the end of 2014 into 2015 now with that's when they cooled it off a bit. But then they got back into it with Triple H and Sheamus, and then Triple H wins the WWE title again, Royal Rumble 2016. That's something I didn't think I'd see again after so many years. I didn't think Triple H would ever win another world title, so that was pretty cool to see. You know, he held it till WrestleMania 32. Not the best match he could have had. Um, I don't think Roman Reigns was the right pick for that time. He just wasn't ready. I don't think he could carry the match properly. He's maybe now he is. Maybe now he's more ready. If that match happened today, same arena, same setting, maybe he would be a little bit more aware of how to put that match together. But the fans were not behind Roman Reigns. It just backfired on all fronts. Um, yeah, if you guys got any questions, comments, some of your favorite Triple H stuff, send them in now. And I'm going to run through the Reign of Terror, what I believe to be the Reign of Terror from 2002 to 2003, Triple H. And that was what people look back at most, and they could not stand Triple H. He wins the title Armageddon 2002, and he holds it for what, 8 or 9 months until Unforgiven 03, where he drops it to Goldberg. Ironically enough, he beats all these WCW guys. Scott Steiner, back-to-back shows. Booker T, they do a little six-way at Backlash. He beats Kevin Nash a couple of times, including a decent Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood in 2003. Um, SummerSlam, he wins, retains the title at Elimination Chamber, the second Elimination Chamber. And shout out to that first Elimination Chamber match. Um, so after Elimination Chamber and SummerSlam, Goldberg finally wins the title, and whatever, it is what it is. At that point, I did want to see Goldberg win the title. I thought Goldberg, was he was awesome. It was cool to see him back at that time. A lot of people thought he should have won it at SummerSlam. I've always loved that finish to that chamber match where Flair slides the hammer through the cage, and then he kind of counters the spear, and they beat the hell out of Goldberg after that. So I've always liked that finish to that. Sometimes a finish could really help a match out like that did. Um, and then, his matches with Goldberg, they are what they are. Uh, and that's where Batista kind of returns. They put a bounty on Goldberg, and Batista returns, takes out Goldberg, and that was really cool. So that was his kind of reign of terror. Triple H felt like he was world champion forever. Um, Goldberg would win it, and then Triple H would win it back. He would drop it to Benoit. He would win it back from Orton, months later, and then they would vacate it. He would win it at New Year's Revolution, and then he would win it back, and he'd drop it to Batista at 21. So, Triple H had a fairly good run there for, 2 or 3 years. Those are some of the best matches, in Triple H's career, moments anyway. From 03 to 05, 06. Those were some some of Triple H's best years. Maybe not from an in-ring standpoint at times, but you know, that ruthless aggression period, you'll always look back to seeing Triple H as the world heavyweight champion. So let's take in some of your questions, guys, or comments if you have any. Wow. So first up here, it was nice to see China getting inducted in the Hall of Fame with DX. And yeah, still think she should have gone in alone. Definitely agree with that. And, you know, China, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this video, China was just, she was special. When you look at her, you think, you know, this woman is just amazing. She really changed how men viewed women in the wrestling world. She wasn't in there wrestling women. She was in there with the men. She was doing a pretty damn good job. She should definitely go in on her own at some point. I don't see it happening anytime soon. It sucks to say it. I personally think it's because of her death and her family. Maybe they have you know, some type of restrictions here or whatever. They don't want WWE to put her name out there like that, or you know, it could be all kind of things. Might be a money type of deal where her family wants so much money to do it, or they don't want to do it. Her family doesn't want to be a part of it. It could be a numerous amount of things. Um, but I think it does have something to do with her estate and who owns the estate. She definitely deserves it. Former women's champion, two-time intercontinental champion. She broke barriers. First woman in the Royal Rumble. First woman to qualify for the King of the Ring tournament. Um, she was like I said, she broke ground, serious ground in the WWF, where women were viewed as you know, a side act or you know, bra and panties type deals in that time period. Then next up here, whose reign of terror do you think was worse, Triple H or John Cena? Honestly, I'm gonna have to go with John Cena on that one. Never really been a fan of John Cena until about 5 or 6 years ago. I loved his initial run there from the beginning till about 2005 or so. I never could get into him as the cornball, goofy WWE champion. In the beginning, he rocked the jerseys and all that cool stuff. Once he started coming out in his own t-shirts, I think that's where things started going downhill for my taste. Um, you know, and I get it from a merchandising standpoint, whatever. But, you know, it especially for that era, it felt like they were not building any new stars. They were just going back to Cena, back to Cena. Let's build this guy up so far. And Cena would take him out. Cena would take him out. Um, Going into WrestleMania 23, Cena was champion, I think, 22 out of the last 24 months. Something like that, which is crazy. Maybe 20 months out of 24. Because Edge had a brief run, and then RVD had a brief run, and then Cena got injured. I think from 2008 and 9 is where things really changed, but they just kept going back to it and back to it. You know, WrestleMania 25, 26, 27. I mean, uh, you could say the same for Triple H, but Triple H did put a lot of guys over as well, where Cena did not. I mean, he put Batista over three straight pay per views and made him look like $1 million. Where John Cena's run was more, it didn't feel as authentic as Triple H's, and it just felt more, WWE changed a lot in that short period of time to where it really felt like John Cena was the corporate guy. He was, the corporate image at that point in time, where Triple H was not, if that makes sense. Also, yeah, I didn't really touch on Triple H and Shawn's other matches. Uh, he's bringing up the Last Man Standing match from Royal Rumble 2004. That is a hell of a match. And I should have brought up a few of his other matches with Shawn. 2 out of 3 Falls Armageddon 2002. I didn't forget about that one. It's more forgotten by now. And then that Hell in a Cell they had as well at Bad Blood. It's one of the longest cell matches they've ever had. I mean, by 2004, Shawn Michaels had been back full time now, and he's already had that incredible match with Jericho. Now Shawn Michaels wants a piece of that world title again. I was actually really surprised they didn't go back to Shawn as champion, but it is rumored that Shawn didn't want to be champion, so maybe that's why. So it's cool that they kept coming up with these ways to kind of different ways to not have Shawn as champion. And he was in a lot of title matches in his day. All the matches with Cena and Triple H, the other guys, Orton. Yeah, I'm not. The merch for Cena, it did work. Yes, so I agree with that. But for what I liked about Cena, that's where I think things started to change, and that's when I fell out of being a fan of John Cena during that period of time. Not that it didn't work. He's one of the greatest merch sellers of all time. You mentioned the spinner title. Um, it was a hell of a run. It's just not what I liked about Cena. And yeah, we had that spinner title for almost 10 years. I think it was 8 years. Almost as long as the Winged Eagle was around, just as much. And yeah, a lot of people own that spinner net title or spinner title. Um, that was one of the best selling championships of all time. Big bucks. The U.S. title, spinner belt as well. And we're probably gonna wrap it up in a few minutes. So my favorite DVD of all time. I've heard J.C. Reynolds. It's probably Thy Kingdom Come if I had to just throw one out. If we're talking just Triple H DVDs. Oh man, there's so many here. The Monday Night Wars, it's got to be on the list as well. Um, that Stone Cold Bottom Line DVD, that 3 disc Blu-ray. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here, guys. Hope you enjoyed the celebration of Triple H 25 years. And those were some of the matches and moments from his career that I enjoyed the most. and let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Some of your favorite Triple H moments. As always, we'll talk to you later. Peace.